Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at one of the graded stakes events on Friday, 4th of July Friday at Saratoga. Race 10 is the Grade 2 Suburban, this one featuring a field of 8 older horses going the classic distance of 1.25 miles. And some quality in this field, Mike, as we've got the big cap winner from earlier this year, the number 4 Locked. I installed him as the morning line favorite over his Todd Pletcher stablemate Antiquarian, as well as a couple of others coming out of the Pimlico Special that figure to take money. Awesome Aaron and Phileas Fogg. And something you know about a lot of these horses is it feels like the 10 furlongs is going to be perfect for most of this field.
Yeah, that's a really good thing about this race, an 8-horse field. And it feels like, most of them, you don't really have distance concerns with them. In fact, a few of these horses, this is probably their best distance. So that just makes it very interesting. All that being said, Locked is your 9-5 morning line favorite. And he's way the horse to beat, David. He's really good and he wants to go this far.
Luck doesn't have a ton of early speed, and it feels like there are plenty of horses in here that need some pace to close into. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for the Suburban, Mike, because I'm not sure how quickly they're going to be going up front. The two horses exiting that Pimlico Special, who kind of raced forwardly in that race, figure to go forward once again in here. I think Phileas Fogg maybe has a little bit more early speed than Awesome Aaron, or at least there's going to be more intention to get him to the lead, especially breaking from the inside post once again. He had to rate off another horse in his last couple of starts, but feels like he'll be the quickest in here. And we'll just see how far he can take them up front and whether or not he can slow down this pace to maybe disadvantage a few of the closers.
I'm going to agree with you that I thought the 1 was going to be the horse cutting the pace in here, assuming he breaks well from the rail. He's got plenty of early speed. He's got a great post position here. And they should just go to the front and see, how he classes up here. Maybe with, maybe in the toughest test of his career to date, David. This horse has run some really good races. What I like about him is he's shown that he can deal with a fast pace going long and still be around at the end.
Well, since we're speaking of Phileas Fogg and he's drawn on the rail, let's start the conversation of the contenders with him. And Mike, I agree. He's set some honest paces in a few of his races. Has kept on in those spots. And I actually thought he ran really well in the Excelsior 2 back at Aqueduct, where he had to let a horse who was just running off in the front end go. He had to rate way off that horse, make the first move to take that race over, and still found more to pull away from that field in the stretch. So that was a big performance from him. And I didn't feel like he really lost anything in defeat to Awesome Aaron last time. Again, a horse that was aggressively ridden to the front. He had to come outside that horse and rate off that pace, but he is best when he can control his own pace on the lead. And the 10 furlongs works just fine for him.
I agree with all that stuff. I mean, I have no problem with his most recent start, even though he wound up having to settle for second. His Excelsior was really good. His Queens County back at the end of December, where he had a long shot, just forcing him up on a really solid pace the entire way and just left that horse in the stretch and ran on. This horse is in great form right now, and it feels like he could be in control early this time.
Mike, a horse that I know you have great affinity for is the number 2 Disarm, but I think the big question with Disarm at this stage of his career is whether or not he can ever get back to some of those big performances he put forth at Saratoga 2 summers ago when he ran a good fourth behind Forte and the Jim Dandy and then came right back to finish second in the Travers, but he went to the sidelines after that. His 4-year-old season, a little bit disappointing. Still trying to round back into form now as a 5-year-old. Did get a victory against weaker company at Oaklawn 2 starts back, but tried some tougher horses in the Oaklawn handicap last time, Mike, and was just kind of one paced in fourth.
Yeah, it didn't run well last time, and they were going in front of him that day too. That pace was solid, and he just never really made an impact. For whatever reason, David, it hasn't worked out for him. He was a good 3-year-old, felt like he had a lot of potential. Didn't really do anything of note last year. His 2 races so far this year aren't that good. I guess what he does have going for him is that that the talent's in there somewhere. And he's another horse who I feel like 1.25 miles is a really good distance for him. Stretching out is good for this horse.
San Siro is another one that's going to appreciate the added distance in this race. The problem is that's true for a lot of other horses, and they have just simply run faster races than he has. And he tried the Pimlico Special last time, finishing well behind Awesome Aaron and Phileas Fogg. And Mike, I don't know what the excuse is that's going to allow him to turn the tables here.
Yeah, I don't see the race that makes this horse a contender in any way, shape, or form in here. The Pimlico Special, unless you want to say that a wet sealed track wasn't to his liking. He got a good trip in that race, and he wasn't close to good enough.
The number 4, Locked, felt like he unlocked new potential when he finally stretched out to a mile and a quarter two back in the Santa Anita handicap. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race. And yeah, Mike, it wasn't the toughest big cap field that we've ever seen, but boy, did it feel like this horse just absolutely loved the mile and a quarter distance. Always hinted that he'd be the type that would appreciate classic distances, but obviously, with the stops and starts he had in his career, he didn't get to compete in some of those major races as a 3-year-old. Well, he finally got to go the 10 furlongs here, and you can just see he is running away from this field with authority through the stretch, just loving the 10 furlongs. And Mike, I'm curious to know what you make of the Ali Sheba last time, because I have a pretty strong take on that race. And I wonder if you view it as a negative that he was off the board there.
No, I mean, I do. I won't say that I view it as a negative, because I don't. I mean, I do think he's probably supposed to be competitive in there, but that to me, dropping back in distance on that track, it really worked against this horse, and he was just too far away. You could actually see him. I know he wound up, well beaten, finishing fourth there, but he really got on track late in that race and was running at the end. The race was already over at that point. The more distance is good for this horse. If he runs, his big cap wasn't a good field. But if he runs that race back, he's going to win this race.
Yeah, to me, the whole narrative going into that Ali Sheba between the two Pletcher runners didn't make sense to me, where people were questioning it for fierceness because they had talked about running in a one-turn mile race at Aqueduct and thinking it was a logical spot for Locked. To me, it just looked like a way better spot for fierceness than Locked, especially given the fact that there was no pace in there. And they just walked up front early and sprinted that last half mile. He never had a chance to make up ground in that race, and actually was not disgraced to even pass a couple of horses getting up for fourth, given how quickly they came home. So I'm not holding that against him. He's been a little bit sluggish in his recent workouts, but that can be him sometimes, so I don't want to make too much of that. The number 5, Bendoog, is a horse who actually was second in this race last year, but felt like that was a much softer edition of the Suburban than the one he's encountering here, Mike. And he's just displayed the antics that we've grown accustomed to seeing from Bendoog in a lot of his recent races. Gets away slowly, likes to lug in, can be unfocused, and he's going to have to run straight and break well if he's going to beat a field of this quality.
Yeah, this horse is okay. He always shows up. He does have his flaws, but he always shows up and runs a really solid race. My take on him, right from the start, since he got over here from Dubai a couple of years ago, David, is I don't really feel like, longer distances are great for this horse. I think he's better going a little bit shorter than this.
Longer distances definitely are okay for the number 6 Honor Marie, who's actually turning back in distance from a 12 furlong try in the Isaac Murphy last time, where he did get the job done, finally returning to the winner's circle for the first time since he won that Kentucky Jockey Club during his 2-year-old season. But Mike, that was clearly a weaker field in this one. He's never really run a speed figure that makes him so competitive with the favorites in here, and I don't see how the pace is going to come apart enough for a horse that's just a real plotter.
Yeah, he's not the best finisher in this race either, because you have Locked in here. So I don't think he's out kicking that horse from the back of the pack. I mean, listen, I'll be honest, I didn't like him much as a 3-year-old, but you could certainly hold out hope that, he's going to get better now as this 4-year-old campaign goes on. He ran fine last time and I stretched him all the way out. I still didn't even think he ran the best race that day. The horse that ran second to him just got going a little bit too late.
And that horse did come back to be a big disappointment in the Belmont Gold Cup that was rained off the turf during Belmont Stakes weekend. The number 7, Antiquarian, the other Todd Pletcher runner in this race, Mike, I thought ran pretty well in the Blame last time, where he was sent off at 9-1, facing off against a good field that included the Kentucky Derby winner Mystic Dan. And we saw that horse return to form and get the job done, beating Antiquarian by a length and a quarter. But an interesting trip for this Todd Pletcher trainee, Mike, because it seemed like he was ranging up like he might take the race over coming to the quarter pole. Mystic Dan made that left-hand turn that we've grown accustomed to seeing from him, where he cuts the corner, and John Velasquez sort of went to the left-handed whip and floated Antiquarian out into the center of the racetrack, and just seemed like he lost focus at that point, got past, had to come around a horse, but he was re-engaging at the end, which gives you some hope that the mile and a quarter distance could really work for him.
I know. I agree with that. I don't know what to make of his Blame last time, David. This is a horse who I liked as a 3-year-old, and I thought his return from the layoff was a really good performance. I don't know what to make of the Blame last time. To me, he was in a really good position throughout that race when they came forward at the top. But you're right that he sort of drifted with the whip there and sort of pushed his rivals wide and let Mystic Dan come up the inside. But this horse, not only did Mystic Dan pass him, post time passed him. The horse that wanted finishing fourth passed him. This horse was fourth at the 16th pole, like he wasn't going to be anywhere. And then all of a sudden he ran again at the end. I don't know what it all means. I do think that he will stretch out effectively, though. And I could see being lenient for that performance if he was the right price in here.
Yeah, and that was just his second start off a log layoff off 1 7 furlong prep last time. So it's reasonable to think he could have further improvement here. And I've watched his recent workouts. They've been pretty impressive in the morning, unlike his stablemate. The number 8 is Awesome Aaron, and he's just really come to hand lately, especially since getting into the Norm Cassie barn, and they figured out that he does want to go longer, not shorter. They concentrated on sprint races for a long time with him, but he has really blossomed since getting out around the 2 turns. And we'll take a look at the longest of those recent races last time out in the Pimlico Special, where he went the mile and 3/16. Didn't like he seemed like he had any problem getting the 9.5 furlongs this day as he runs down Phileas Fogg, who will be facing again here, Mike. But kind of feels like this might have been the day to have him, where he was 7-1 against a field that he was certainly competitive against based on speed figures. And now he's landing in a spot where you've got some horses with a lot of back class, and this might be slightly tougher.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very fair point you bring up. That this was probably a good time to have him here because he was coming off of a career best performance, and you know, I still thought he ran well in there, David. I mean, I thought he beat Phileas Fogg fair and square. I know that pace was solid, and Phileas Fogg was sort of sitting on top of it, but this horse sat right off those horses, 3 wide around the track, and came and closed it down. This horse is in really, really good form right now.
Mike, where did you land in this grade 2 Suburban as we go to our picks for this race?
I couldn't really talk myself into anybody against Lockton here, David. I just think if he shows up and runs his good race, I just think he's going to be too good for these horses. I have your top pick second. I'm still struggling to figure out what to make of that most recent start, but I like him as a horse.
Yeah, both of these Pletcher horses are coming off efforts that are a little perplexing. I agree. Locked is way the horse to beat in this race. And if he runs back to his big cap, the others are probably running for second in here. I just think that there might be another step forward coming from his stablemate Antiquarian, and he figures to be a slightly better price than that morning line favorite. So 7-4, 1-8 for me, and 4-7, 2-1 for Mike in the grade 2 Suburban race 10 at Saratoga on the 4th of July. Good luck if you're playing the races later this week.